Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Steelers, wild card weekend in Pittsburgh. No, this is not deja vu. And no, this is not bad luck. This is an opportunity for Cleveland, an opportunity to erase an embarrassing Week 5 loss in that same stadium, an opportunity to yet again be the underdog, a chance to silence your most vocal critics who say this team literally has zero chance coming into this game. This is what is on the table for the Cleveland Browns. And honestly, this is when this team has played its best all year, when it's been counted out or slept on or looked at sideways. This team has always played best in those situations. So what's going to happen on Sunday night? And what has to happen on Sunday night for the Browns to be put on a path to victory? Well, let's talk about it. Real quick before I get into this video, I want to make sure I give a shout out to the Dog Check tier Patreon members. And as always, I start with Michael Matique, Greg Ealer, Seth Harrison, Corporal Nick Lopez, Nick Nasty, Mandela Moore, the only Browns fan in Wisconsin, Batman, Jake Phillips, Rush Shear, Barack Kumar, John Alver, Masayua, Budza Roland, Ethan Rindauer, James Nemo, Mac House, Reeve Hertz, Justin Cole, Philip Wilcoxon, Marie Vivert, Timothy McClure, Keith Anderson, Joshua Still, Sean Barron, Gagos Pisano, Dom Gazzulo, Ian Whitaker, Colin 216, Anthony Latham, Christian, Matt Bond, Dave Strong, Michael Stone, Soul Train, Charles Work, Dan in West Texas, Billy, Michael Holdenack, Jared Austin, Dylon W, Josh Bendor, Dylan Hell, Andrew Sadejo, David Maldonado, Chad Gimme, Rex Kaufman, Edrin Hall, James McGinley, Brody Cook, Moose Gentry, Patrick F, Austin Z, Mark Burnett II, Andre Griffin, Otis Wolf, IT Rex, Austin Bolin, Jesus Serrano, Joshua Paulus, Chris Fawns, Pick Down Browns Backers, Mark Kahn, Max Al Dojo, Beerman 069, SSJ Swift, Andrew Hirsch, Feeling Dangerous 113, Dave Mike May, John Cummings, Robert Jermaine, Cleveland BCI, Anthony O, Bobo Regretti, Stuart Moore, TJ Showman on cue, Mark M, Jalil Salim Sr., Martha Crusnut, Frankie B and Matt the Aggie, Mud Duck, Brad Cowboy, Keith Gurkak, Ryan T, Jonathan Fredericks, CK, Eric Green, Joseph Stevens, and Water Bear Marketing. All right, so let's address the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is obviously the virus. It's been affecting the team for the last 2 weeks. And this is recorded early Thursday morning. And as of that time, the Browns have not practiced yet. They won't have Joe Bitonio. They won't have Kevin Stefanski, a handful of coaches, and possibly no Kevin Johnson. It hasn't been clear whether he's been on close contact or if he is on the full test positive list. We won't know until later on today. If he's on the field, then, you know, he didn't test positive. Obviously, he was close contact because that will only be 5 days. On the bright side, you got BJ Goodson back already. There's a strong chance you can get Andrew Sadejo and Harrison Bryant back, and a 50-50 shot that you get Malcolm Smith and Denzel Ward back. And also, you know, unfortunately, more than likely, no Donovan Peoples-Jones because concussion protocol, he ain't clearing that in a week. Most people don't. Now, that already is a massive trade-off of just players, coaches, and all kind of people going in and out. Who's going to be active? Who's going to be out. And also it's no guarantee that nobody tests positive going forward. That can always happen. So the question, considering all those factors, is this doom and gloom, and do the Browns have no chance of victory given all these circumstances? And my answer is not really. I don't think that some of these losses are going to be as impactful as they were, and again, I'm just working off of what I know early Thursday morning, as what happened the day before the Jets game. I don't think it's that similar of a situation. I think this is much different when you're talking about knowing your coach is going to be out pretty much for a whole week before the game. That gives you sufficient time to prepare for that absence. And when it comes to not having your head coach on the sideline, I know it's a big, nice headline and people might want to freak out about it. And Kevin Stefanski has done a tremendous job coaching this team. I want to remind people that the bulk of Kevin Stefanski's job and the reason he's considered for Coach of the Year isn't because of what he does on the sidelines on Sunday, sometimes Thursday, sometimes Mondays. It's what he does in between the weeks that makes him Coach of the Year. The play on the field on Sunday is a symptom of the stuff that you do Monday through Friday in the facility. And I know it's a cliche, but that's true. It's about building that foundation. If you've played sports on any level, you'll know that sometimes in some locker rooms, you'll get into a situation where one coach has the respect of the team and people will act right with that coach, but the other coach is recess. That's not a good culture. So if Kevin Stefanski has truly built a good culture, once he leaves the room, it should still be able to exist because of the foundation he put in place. This is not some tent of culture that Kevin Stefanski has to physically be there to hold up. This should be an institution that should be able to stand up on its own strength. It's why a team like the Warriors can go 73-9 with Steve Kerr not coaching the bulk of the games. It's the culture, it's the institution that you're building as a coach during the week, not necessarily what you do during the games. With Kevin Stefanski, he has done a good enough job that I'm not going to automatically assume that he was not prepared for a scenario that, quite frankly, was pretty likely, right? Of him testing positive and not being able to coach a game. So I think they've had a plan in place, and I trust their plan in place. Now, with that elephant out the room, let's actually talk about the game that's going to happen on Sunday night instead of all this meta stuff. And we're going to start with the Browns' defensive matchup versus the Steelers' offense. So the big question with the Pittsburgh Steelers offense is which Steelers offense is going to show up, because the Steelers have been one of two attacks. They don't do play action, period. But the one or two attacks they have been is short passing exclusively or taking a ton of deep shots to Chase Claypool. And when you look at the Steelers offense, the evidence from the whole year would suggest that the Steelers would do what, they've been criticized of being, which is a offense that is filled with short passes. They're 31st in completed air yards per attempt, 4.8 yards. It's abysmal. And an offense that is also filled of wide receiver drops. 43 drops is number one in the NFL by a large margin. But interestingly enough, if you look at both the games the Steelers played versus the Browns this year, you see one of those trends tend to go away, and the trend that goes away is the short passes. They have not had a short passing game versus the Cleveland Browns. In Week 17, Mason Rudolph absolutely aired it out, averaging 10.8 completed air yards per attempt. To show you how big that number is, Baker Mayfield is number one in the league in completed air yards per attempt, which is a stat that measures how much air, how many yards the ball travels in the air to see who's throwing short or long passes. Baker Mayfield leads the league in that stat with 7.7 yards. So Mason Rudolph well above what is the top average in the league in that one game. It's really high, and it's also 2 times more than what the Steelers average just alone on offense. So hearing that, some people, confirmation bias, are going to go, okay, that clicks what I thought in my head. Ben's done. He only throws short passes. That's the problem with the Steelers offense. Oh, whoop, slow down. An interesting fact about this is that in Week 5 versus Cleveland, Ben actually had his highest average of completed air yards per attempt all season, averaging 7 completed air yards per attempt, which is very close to Baker Mayfield's 7.7 average, which means that the Steelers' strategy whenever they play that Browns defense, no matter who's playing out there, is to go deep. So going into this game, if you think you're going to see short passes, all the short stuff to Juju this week, nah, you're going to see a ton of Chase Claypool this week. And since the status of Denzel Ward is a huge question mark, you can't really depend on it one way or the other. It's kind of a bonus at this point. The player the Browns are going to absolutely need to step up is Myles Garrett, because if Myles puts on the Superman cape and gets pressure on Ben early and often, he doesn't need to get sacks, but he needs to make his presence known, needs to get pressure, needs to affect some passes early on and let Ben know he's not going to have a ton of time to just sit back there and wait for these guys to get deep, that can put a massive wedge in what the Steelers are trying to do and how they plan to attack the Browns. Whenever they go for the short stuff against the Browns, it's not very successful. A lot of those 3-and-outs last week that Pittsburgh had was because they started trying to go to the short stuff. When they go to the deep stuff, it's successful. If you don't have the personnel back there to consistently shut the deep stuff down, i.e. you don't have 2 Denzel Wards out there, then the next best thing is to wreck the time that you have to wait by getting Myles Garrett in the backfield. Now, the one thing that should be noted is that while Myles has had a history of putting up his best performances against Pittsburgh, it has not happened this year. The 2 games he's played versus Pittsburgh, he has not had those multiple sack games that he normally has against that team. So the obvious question there is, does that mean that Myles is due up for a big game, or does that mean that the Steelers figured something out that can really slow Myles down? The answer to that question will be pivotal to the result of this game. Now, as far as the secondary is concerned, with or without Ward, I want to make sure I send this message. With or without Ward, it's going to be an uphill battle. Obviously, they had Denzel Ward that first game. I don't think it made that much of a difference. But with or without Ward, it's going to be an uphill battle for a few specific reasons. One, you're still going to see a healthy amount of MJ Stewart and Robert Jackson. I know you think if Denzel Ward comes back, they're going to go away. They're still going to be in the game plan because, one, those 2 players will not have been able to practice all week. And now at this point, I don't know if they're ever going to practice this week. So that's going to be an issue, right? Also, these dudes are coming off of the C list. And one of the things we don't talk about coming off the C list is that you don't just come back 100% after getting off that list. Look at Myles Garrett. It's taken him 4 weeks to get back to taking a regular load, and we hope he can do it this week in the playoffs. So what does that mean for Denzel Ward and Andrew Sadeo? It means that there's going to be a slight difference to how they're used. I think the likely way that Denzel Ward will be used is pretty much, it's like it's basketball. Whenever you see Chase Claypool, get on Chase Claypool, guard Chase Claypool. That's your responsibility. If Chase Claypool isn't on the field, get off the field. We'll put Robert Jackson in the game so you can not get gassed or not be out there trying to cover somebody and be gassed, because that's worse than having a bad corner out there. When it comes to Andrew Sadeo, again, you can't expect him to go back to free safety, which means he plays every snap and do all those responsibilities. You have to work him back in. And what that means is that Andrew Sadeo, instead of playing free safety, which is his natural position, he's probably going to play a lot of slot corner, which he's played before, and he's actually played well in the playoffs. If you look at his game versus the New Orleans Saints, he did a good job on Michael Thomas. As weird as that sounds, it did happen. And you can play him in the slot, so you can take him on and off the field easier than if he were at that free safety position for the whole game. So it's going to change how many snaps these guys see. Also, while I mentioned that, I do want to say that that's more than good enough if you can get a decent pass rush from Myles Garrett, Larry Ogunjobi, and Adrian Claiborne, who's going to be stepping in for Olivier Vernon. If you can get a pass rush with those guys, if Myles can put on the cape and be Myles Garrett this week, then I think that'd be good enough. But that's what you absolutely have to do this week. If Ben gets comfortable and is allowed to get time out there to throw deep, and he's probably going to be successful more often than he's not, if he's able to go deep and has that time, has that comfort, then it's going to be a shootout. And I don't know if you want to get into a shootout with the Pittsburgh team who you're going to try to exploit offensively with the run. Speaking of the offense, let's talk about the Browns offense. All right, so the first thing I want to mention is protection. The Browns' offensive line has been excellent against almost every team except Pittsburgh. Pass blocking, when they're normally in the high 90s, they were 62.4 in both their games versus Pittsburgh. Run blocking, they were 43.4 in week 5. Drastically lower than like the 90 average that they have on PFF. Week 17, it was back up to like a 70.7. Now, there is a interesting trend when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers and run defense that I'm going to talk about. That is, since week 13, since they lost Spillane and Bud Dupree, their run defense seems to have drastically fallen off a cliff compared to where it was. Like, this was a run defense that nobody could run on early in the season. I mean, like, you're holding Derrick Henry to 80 yards consistently. Like, all these teams that went in there, minus the Ravens with a Lamar Jackson, they stopped the run pretty well. And once Spillane and Bud Dupree and all these linebackers got hurt, it seemed to take its toll on the run defense. Not necessarily the pass defense, obviously, or the pass rush, but the run defense specifically is where it's been down. If you look at the Buffalo game, the Indy game, the Cincy game, the last Cleveland game, they have not stopped the run well. And I think that's a bigger problem than just TJ Watt and Cam Hayward can fix. And I know Steelers fans are going to throw that at me because that's who was out in week 17. But also remember, this is a 4-week trend, and those players did play 3 of those last 4 weeks. You can say those games happen in quick succession, and maybe the rest is going to make up for that. But I think the run defense problems are a little bit bigger than just getting those guys rest. I think it's more emblematic of just not having the same level of depth that the Steelers defense had early in the season. For the Browns passing attack, I think this is exactly the same secondary that you're going to play that you played last week. Minka's still out there, Mike Hilton, Steven Nelson, no Joe Hayden. So this is the same passing attack. They're going to come at you the same way, have the same flaws. Baker did a decent job attacking it last week. I would expect that they try to throw some tricks in there, but for Baker, play action pass is going to be huge. This is a really aggressive defense, especially when they don't have all of their top players. They try to compensate by being more aggressive. So the play action could work if you're patient with it and if we can get the blocks at the right time. And also for Baker Mayfield, this is going to require him to continue to be sharp pre-snap, which he did a pretty good job of against the Pittsburgh game and against most teams. Again, his interceptions are down drastically. His sharpness in pre-snap is a huge part of that. All right, so the more I look at this game, even knowing all the obstacles that the Browns have going into it, I just don't see this unwinnable game that a lot of people have made this game out to be for the Cleveland Browns. I just don't see how this game's not winnable for this team. I get how it could be tough. I definitely don't think it's going to be easy, but there are a lot of people who just don't think the Browns have a chance this week, or if the Browns win, it would be some kind of massive upset. And I just think that's misjudging the situation drastically. If you just look at the matchups, there are some things that really do bode well for this Cleveland Browns team. Offensively, if you look at the last few weeks, some of the Pittsburgh Steelers defense's weaknesses has been play action, has been misdirection, has been stopping the run. All of those things are exactly what the Steelers have struggled with in the last 4 weeks when they have had all those injuries, and the exact things that the Browns are really good at. Defensively, yes, the deep ball is a problem, and it could become a massive problem. But Myles Garrett is more than a plausible solution for that problem. On top of that, the possibility of getting people like Andrew Sadejo back, Malcolm Smith back, Denzel Ward back, all of those things just add to this team's ability to defend the deep ball just a little bit better than they did the week previous. But Myles Garrett himself, if he's out there, is a good enough player to be a plausible solution to a deep ball problem. And also, it's not entirely out the question that the Browns just come out a little bit more prepared for the deep ball attack after noticing that the Steelers specifically only like to attack the Browns deep. So maybe you see more cover two. Maybe you see more quarters. Maybe you see more zone. These are all things that did work last week against that Steelers offense that's going to be very similar to what you saw this week. To me, honestly, the more I look at this game, the more I see reasons that the Browns can win this game. What I don't see is any reason the Browns can't win the game at this point. Again, recorded early Thursday morning. I don't know if an outbreak happened the second I hit upload, but at this point, early Thursday morning, I don't see a reason the Browns can't win this game. Yes, Joe Bitonio is not going to play. That is a massive blow. That's disappointing, but we have to acknowledge on the offensive line, that's one position where if you have 4 good offensive linemen, you can make up for 1 bad offensive lineman. We have seen this before in Cleveland this season. You can't do it if it's multiple, but if it's just one, you can make up for that. I get Kevin Stefanski not being there on the sideline is a big storyline piece and is something that you could put a headline out that makes everybody freak out. But ask yourself, do you think Kevin Stefanski is the coach of the year? Do you think Kevin Stefanski is a real good coach? If your answer to those 2 things are yes, then you can't also tell me that he would not be prepared for something like this, which is very likely, right? You have to trust that if you think somebody's coach of the year material, they are prepared for something like this that could have happened at any point this season. You know, if you're sitting there telling me on Twitter that the Browns stand no chance because Kevin Stefanski's not going to be there, and the reason that's so important is because he changed the culture, you can't then tell me him not being there is going to be a massive problem, because if he's changed the culture, it should be able to exist if he's not going to be there for 1 game and he's had 5 days to prepare for it. Maybe I'm just too optimistic. Maybe my Browns fans shining through and I'm not being objective. I don't know. Maybe it's just junk Browns fans bias-sided homer analysis and I'm terrible at my job. But I don't think I have been bad at this all year. I don't know. I just don't see, when I look out at this game, the dark clouds and thunderstorms that a lot of people do see. I'm not seeing it. You know, when I look at this game, I see a football game that the Browns match up a lot better than a lot of people think. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.